The city never truly slept. Even at midnight, the glass towers shimmered, their lights flickering like stars trapped in steel. Inside one of those towers, the echoes of laughter, music, and clinking glasses filled the penthouse of Richard Kane, billionaire industrialist, media darling, and one of the most powerful men in the country. But tonight, the man who had everything didn't look powerful. He looked empty. His eyes were distant as he raised another glass of whiskey. Around him, guests mingled and smiled. Politicians, celebrities, investors, all pretending to adore him. They called it a celebration for another merger, another fortune made. But Richard wasn't celebrating. He was drowning. When the music stopped, he barely noticed. His body swayed, his breath heavy. Then, with a sudden gasp, the glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble floor. "Mr. Kane!" someone shouted. The room erupted in chaos. Guests rushed toward him, but none dared touch him. Richard collapsed, his face pale, his lips turning blue. Downstairs, a janitor named Maya Williams had just started her shift. The overnight cleaning crew worked in silence, invisible, forgotten. But Maya wasn't like the others. She had once dreamed of becoming a nurse. Life had other plans. Her husband's illness, the debt, the eviction. Everything had pushed her down until the only thing left was the job nobody noticed. But fate was about to notice her. The elevator doors opened to the top floor, and she heard the panic before she saw it. People yelling, security shouting, someone calling for help. Maya dropped her mop and ran. When she entered the penthouse, the crowd split like water parting for a stone. A black janitor didn't belong in a billionaire's circle, but she didn't care. On the floor, Richard Kane was dying. "Somebody call an ambulance," a woman cried. "I already did," another shouted. Maya knelt beside him. His pulse was weak, his breathing shallow. Foam gathered at the corner of his lips. "He's choking," she said quickly, her voice steady. "Someone get me a towel." A man hesitated. "You're a cleaner. Now," she snapped. The authority in her tone silenced him. He handed her a towel, trembling. Maya tilted Richard's head, checked his airway, and started chest compressions. The guest stood frozen, unable to look away. "Come on, breathe," she whispered, pressing down hard. "Don't quit on me now." 30 compressions, 2 breaths, repeat. She counted them in her head, the rhythm steady, the room fading away. Then his pulse stopped. The silence was deafening. Maya's heart pounded as she realized the truth. He was gone. But something inside her refused to accept it. "Not tonight," she whispered. "Not on my watch." She leaned down, sealing her lips over his. A breath, then another. Again. The guests gasped. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." But Maya didn't stop, and then a faint sound and a cough. Richard's body jerked. Air rushed into his lungs. His chest rose, then fell. The room erupted in cries of relief. Maya pulled back, breathless, her hands trembling. She had done it. She had saved him. The paramedics arrived moments later, pushing through the crowd. One of them glanced at her, surprise in his eyes. "You did CPR?" She nodded silently. "Good job," he said. "You probably saved his life." As they lifted Richard onto a stretcher, he opened his eyes briefly. His gaze met hers, confused, distant, but alive. And for a brief second, time stopped. Maya stood there, her uniform stained, her hair disheveled, surrounded by people who had never looked at her twice. Yet tonight, every eye in the room was on her. By the time the paramedics left, the whispers began. Who was she? A janitor, I think. She kissed him. She saved him. Security tried to escort her away, but a voice stopped them. Wait, it was the assistant, a nervous young man in a suit. Mr. Kane's team will want to know who helped him. Stay by the elevator until they call you. Maya didn't want attention. She just wanted to go home. But she waited. Half an hour later, an older man approached, Richard's personal physician, Dr. Harland. You administered CPR? He asked. Yes, Maya replied softly. I used to be a nurse. Dr. Harland studied her face. Used to be? She hesitated. My license expired years ago. I couldn't renew it. He nodded slowly. Well, you did the right thing. You saved him. Maya looked down. Is he going to be all right? He's stable for now. We're taking him to St. Andrews. When the doctor left, Maya picked up her mop again. The crowd had dispersed. Only the echo of panic remained, and a single smear of blood on the marble where Richard had fallen. She wiped it quietly, her hands shaking, her heart heavy. By the next morning, The story was everywhere. Billionaire collapses, saved by janitor. Heroic act or twist of fate. A kiss that saved a fortune. Reporters camped outside the hospital. News anchors replayed the footage of the ambulance leaving. Nobody knew her name yet, but the world already had a headline. At dawn, Maya sat alone in the staff break room, sipping lukewarm coffee. Her coworkers stared at her from across the room, whispering. She ignored them. Then her phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Miss Williams," a voice said. "This is Claire, Mr. Kane's assistant. He'd like to see you." Maya froze. "See me?" "Yes, ma'am, today at his private residence." Her hands trembled as she hung up. Why would a billionaire want to see her? Gratitude? Curiosity? Something else? Either way, she had no choice but to go. That afternoon, Maya stood before the massive gates of Richard Kane's mansion. The estate stretched beyond sight. Manicured lawns, marble fountains, security guards in tailored suits. She felt completely out of place in her faded uniform and scuffed shoes. Inside, a maid led her through the grand foyer, past portraits and chandeliers that looked more expensive than her entire life. In the living room, Richard Kane sat in a wheelchair, a blanket over his lap, an IV line in his arm. He looked weak, but those sharp gray eyes were still piercing. When he saw her, he smiled faintly. "So you're the woman who saved me?" Maya nodded awkwardly. "I just did what anyone would do. Anyone." He chuckled softly. "There were 40 people in that room and not one of them moved." "You did." She didn't know what to say. He studied her quietly. "What's your name?" "Maya Williams, sir." "Williams," he repeated. "You're not a doctor, are you?" "I was a nurse," she said, "until life happened." He nodded thoughtfully. "Then life sent you to me." Maya frowned. "I don't understand." Richard's expression softened. "When I was on that floor, I remember I couldn't breathe. And then I felt warmth, someone trying to pull me back. I thought I was dreaming. Turns out it was you." She smiled faintly. "You were lucky." He shook his head. "No, you were the lucky one. Because now I owe you my life." Before she could reply, his assistant entered. "Sir, the board meeting." "Cancel it," Richard interrupted. "I have more important things to discuss." The assistant blinked. "Yes, sir." When they were alone again, Richard leaned forward. "Miss Williams, tell me something. If you could change your life, truly change it, what would you do?" Maya hesitated. "I'd go back to nursing school. Get my license again. Help people," he smiled. "Then maybe it's time you did." Her brow furrowed. "I can't afford that." "I didn't ask if you could," he said softly. "I asked if you wanted to." Maya stared at him, unsure what he meant. "Come work for me," Richard said finally. "Not as a janitor. As part of my private care team. I'll pay for your recertification. You'll have everything you need." She blinked in disbelief. "You're serious?" "I'm alive because of you," he said simply. "Let me return the favor." Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time in years, someone wasn't looking down on her. Someone saw her. "Thank you," she whispered. Richard smiled. "No, thank you. For saving me when everyone else watched me die." Outside, the city lights began to glow again. The world would keep spinning. But for two strangers whose lives had collided in one impossible night, everything had changed. For the first time in years, Maya Williams woke up with something that felt like hope. She stood at her small apartment window, watching the city stir to life. Buses roaring, vendors shouting, people rushing to work. But her world felt different. The night before, she was a janitor who saved a man's life. Today, she was the woman a billionaire wanted to hire. Still, she didn't trust it. Men like Richard Kane lived in worlds she would never belong to. Worlds built on money, power, and promises that vanished the moment you reached for them. But as she stood there in her worn-out scrubs, she couldn't shake his words. "Come work for me. Let me change your life." By noon, she found herself back at the iron gates of his estate. The same guards nodded her through, and she was led once again into the mansion's golden halls. Richard was waiting for her in his study, a room lined with books, paintings, and the smell of old leather and coffee. He looked healthier today, though still pale, a small oxygen tube clipped to his nose. When he saw her, he smiled warmly. "You came." "I wasn't sure if it was real," Maya admitted. "People like you don't usually make promises to people like me." He chuckled softly. "Then maybe it's time someone did." She took a cautious seat across from him. "You said you wanted to hire me. What exactly would I be doing?" You'd work as my medical aide, Richard said. I have a team of doctors, but I need someone I can trust day to day. Someone who isn't afraid to speak honestly, and someone who's already proven she won't panic when things go wrong. Maya raised an eyebrow. You mean you want a nurse who'll also tell you when you're being an idiot? He grinned. Exactly that. For the first time, she smiled back. He slid an envelope across the table. This covers your first month's pay in advance, plus a stipend to help you reapply for your nursing certification. My lawyers have already spoken to the medical board. Maya hesitated before opening it. You didn't have to do that. I didn't, he said softly. But I wanted to. Inside the envelope was a check, more money than she had ever seen in her life. Her throat tightened. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. Just don't give up on yourself again, Richard said. That'll be enough. The first few weeks at the mansion felt like stepping into another universe. Maya's job was simple. Manage his medication, monitor his vitals, coordinate with his doctors. But nothing about life around Richard Kane was simple. The mansion buzzed with activity. Assistants came and went. Businessmen whispered about deals worth billions. Every morning, reporters camped outside the gate, desperate for a glimpse of the billionaire who had cheated death. And through it all, Richard seemed lonely. He spent hours by the window staring at the city below, the empire he had built, the kingdom that no longer felt like home. One afternoon, while checking his blood pressure, Maya noticed the dark circles beneath his eyes. You didn't sleep again, she said gently. He smiled faintly. Old habits. You can't turn off your mind when it's built to win. Maybe that's the problem, she replied. You're still fighting battles that don't exist. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression softened. You talk to me like no one else does, he said. I talk to you like a human being, Maya said simply. Everyone else talks to your money. He laughed quietly, the sound warm but sad. You're right. Maybe that's why I can breathe when you're around. Maya froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. There was something in his tone, gratitude maybe, but also something deeper. She brushed it off and focused on his readings. Still, as the days passed, the line between employer and friend began to blur. One evening, while the staff prepared for a private dinner, a storm rolled over the city. Lightning flashed across the skyline, thunder shaking the mansion's glass windows. Richard stood on the balcony, his robe whipping in the wind. Maya found him there drenched and shivering. You shouldn't be out here, she said, rushing to him. I like the storm, he said softly. It reminds me I'm still alive. Not if you catch pneumonia, she replied, pulling him back inside. He smiled weakly. You sound like my mother. She handed him a towel. Maybe you should have listened to her more. He chuckled, then winced. His hand pressed to his chest. Are you all right? Maya asked quickly. It's just tight, he muttered. Happens sometimes, but she wasn't convinced. His skin was pale again, his breathing labored. Sit down, she ordered. Now, he obeyed. Maya grabbed the emergency kit and took his vitals. His heart rate was erratic. I'm calling your doctor, she said. No, Richard said sharply. No hospitals. Not tonight. Then you'll listen to me, she said firmly. You're not dying again on my watch. He stared at her. That same fire she had the night she saved him still burning in her eyes. And finally nodded. Maya mixed a mild sedative, monitored his pulse, and stayed by his side until his breathing steadied. When he finally opened his eyes again, the thunder had quieted. Rain pattered softly against the glass. You stayed, he murmured. I wasn't going anywhere, she said. He smiled faintly. You saved me twice now. Maya folded her arms. Let's not make it a habit, he laughed softly. You're not like anyone I've ever met. I'll take that as a compliment, she said. It is, he replied. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. There was a strange electricity in the air, the same kind that lingered after lightning. Then Richard looked away, breaking the spell. You must think I'm pathetic. A man with everything still needing saving. I think, Maya said quietly, that everyone needs saving sometimes, even billionaires. He smiled, but his voice was heavy. You talk like someone who's seen the world break. She hesitated. Maybe I have. Tell me, he said gently, so she did. She told him about her husband and a good man who died too young, about the hospital bills that buried her, about the system that took everything, including her license. When she finished, the room was silent. "I'm sorry," Richard said softly. "Don't be," she replied. "I survived. That's what matters." He looked at her like someone seeing hope for the first time in years. "You know, Maya, maybe you didn't just save my life. Maybe you reminded me what life is supposed to feel like." She smiled faintly. "I just did my job." "No," he said. "You did more than that." Outside, the rain faded into a soft drizzle. The world felt quiet, almost tender. And somewhere in that silence, something unspoken grew between them. Fragile. Uncertain, but undeniably real. Weeks passed, and Maya became part of Richard's daily life. She organized his medication, managed his appointments, even convinced him to eat properly, something no one else had managed in years. But the closer they grew, the more the outside world began to notice. Headlines started to whisper again. Billionaire and his savior? More than gratitude? Mysterious woman living at Kane Estate? Maya ignored them, but the staff didn't. Some whispered behind her back. Others stopped speaking to her entirely. One evening, as she entered the study, she overheard two assistants talking. "She's manipulating him," one sneered. "Playing the savior to get close, please," the other replied. "He's a grown man. If he wants to waste money on a charity case, that's his problem." Maya's heart clenched. She walked away quietly before they could see her. That night, she told Richard she wanted to leave. He looked up from his papers, startled. "Leave? Why?" "It's not working," she said. "Your people don't trust me. And maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong here." He pushed himself out of his chair. "You belong here because I said so." "It's not about you," she said softly. "It's about the world you live in. I can't fit into it." He stepped closer, eyes burning with emotion. "You think I care what the world thinks? They watched me die, Maya. You're the only one who tried to save me. That's the only truth I care about." Her throat tightened. "Richard?" He shook his head. "Don't go, please." For a long moment she didn't answer. Then she looked into his eyes. Eyes that once saw only power and money but now held something fragile. "I'll stay," she whispered. "But only because you still need me healthy." He smiled faintly. "That's good enough for me." But deep down, both of them knew it was more than that. As the night deepened, the city lights flickered in the rain outside. Two souls, one broken by loss, the other by loneliness, had found something neither expected. And somewhere far away, a camera lens clicked. Someone was watching. The morning after the storm, the mansion was strangely quiet. Maya woke before dawn, as she always did, to check Richard's vitals. The soft glow of the monitor reflected off his peaceful face. He looked better, calmer, as if the thunder had carried away some of his restlessness. But peace never lasted long in the world Richard Kane lived in. By the time the sun rose, headlines were spreading like wildfire. Billionaire's secret nurse, mystery woman living in Kane Mansion. From janitor to billionaire's confidant, who is Maya Williams? The tabloids had found her name, and they weren't kind. When Maya entered the dining room, the staff went silent. Phones buzzed. Eyes followed her. A tablet sat on the counter showing a photo of her, taken from behind the mansion gates, her face partially visible. The caption read, "Billionaire savior or gold digger." She froze. Richard looked up from his newspaper. His expression turned dark. "Turn that off," he ordered sharply. The maid scrambled to obey. Maya clenched her fists. "They're saying I'm using you," she said quietly. "That I'm here for your money." "Let them talk," Richard replied. "They don't matter." "They do," she said. "Because they don't see you. They see a man who's been played by someone like me." He looked at her, confused. "Someone like you?" "A poor black woman with nothing," she said flatly. "They'll never believe I helped you out of kindness. They'll think I had a plan." Richard stood slowly. "Then let them come here and see the truth." "Richard, no," he interrupted, his voice low but firm. "I've spent my life caring what people think. But the night I died, no one lifted a finger. Only you did. So if they want to tear you down, they'll have to go through me first." The intensity in his voice silenced her, but she could see the exhaustion behind his defiance. He was still recovering, and the stress would only make him worse. "You don't have to protect me," she said softly. "Yes, I do," he replied. "Because no one protected you when they should have." For a long moment they stood in silence. The space between them felt charged, with anger, with gratitude, with something neither dared name. Then Richard took a deep breath and said, "There's a charity gala tonight, one I was supposed to attend before. Everything happened. You'll come with me." Maya blinked. "What?" "You're my guest," he said. "They want a story? Let's give them one they can't twist." "Richard, that's non-negotiable," he said gently, cutting her off. "You stood by me when I was dying. Now I'll stand by you while the world watches." That night the world watched indeed. The gala was held at the Grand Regent Hotel, all marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and photographers crowding the entrance. The moment Richard Kane stepped out of his limousine, flashbulbs exploded, and when Maya followed, wearing a simple black gown Richard's assistant had insisted she wear, the cameras went wild. The crowd didn't know what to make of her. Some gasped, others whispered, but she walked beside him, not behind, her chin high, her steps steady. Richard leaned close and whispered, "You're braver than half the people in this room." She smiled faintly. "You sure about this?" "Absolutely," he said. "Let them see what real courage looks like." Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Wealth, power, and pretense filled the air like expensive perfume. Richard shook hands, smiled for photos, and ignored the murmurs. Maya stayed close, quietly observant, her presence both graceful and defiant. Halfway through the evening, a reporter approached. "Mr. Kane, care to comment on your relationship with Miss Williams?" Richard's smile didn't waver. "She's the reason I'm standing here tonight. Without her, there wouldn't be a relationship to ask about," the reporter pressed. "So she's your nurse?" Richard turned slightly, eyes sharp. "She's my friend. The best one I've ever had." The flash of cameras followed. Maya felt a lump in her throat. She hadn't expected him to defend her so fiercely, especially in front of the same people who whispered about her all week. As the night wore on, the room began to shift. What started as gossip turned into curiosity, even admiration. A few guests approached Maya quietly, thanking her for saving Richard's life, but not everyone was kind. Near the end of the evening, as she stepped outside for some air, a woman approached, elegant, poised, wearing diamonds that glittered like frost. "Miss Williams, isn't it?" she asked smoothly. "I'm Vivian Langford. I used to work closely with Richard." "Nice to meet you," Maya said politely. Vivian smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "You're quite the story, aren't you? From janitor to companion. Impressive." Maya recognized the venom behind the sugar. "I was just doing my job." "Of course," Vivian said. "And now you're living in his house, wearing his gifts, attending his events. Some jobs come with nice benefits." Maya's chest tightened. "If you're implying something, say it." Vivian's smirk deepened. "Just a friendly warning. Men like Richard, and they save people, but they don't keep them." Before Maya could reply, a familiar voice interrupted. "That's enough, Vivian." Richard stood behind her, eyes cold. "Go find someone else to insult. This one's out of your league." Vivian's smile faded. "Always the hero, huh?" she said quietly before walking away. Richard turned to Maya. "Don't listen to her." "I'm fine," she said, though her voice trembled. "No," he said. "You're not. You shouldn't have to fight battles like this alone." Maya looked up at him. "Then stop fighting mine. You'll ruin yourself." He stepped closer. "Maybe that's worth it," she froze. His tone had changed, no longer casual, no longer guarded. There was something raw in it. "Richard," she said softly. "Don't." He shook his head. "You don't get it, do you? You didn't just save my life, Maya, you gave it back to me. Every morning I wake up, I remember your hands, your voice, your courage. And I realize, I've been alive for years, but I haven't lived until you walked in." Her breath caught. "You're still recovering. You're confused." He took another step. "No, for once I'm clear." Maya's eyes shimmered. "You shouldn't say things like that." "And why not?" "Because I might start believing them." The world seemed to stop. The rain outside had started again, soft against the glass. Their reflections shimmered together in the window. Two people from different worlds standing in the same storm. Then, without another word, he reached for her hand. She didn't pull away, slowly, carefully, as if time itself were holding its breath. He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't the desperate kiss of the night she saved him. It was gentle, deliberate, full of everything left unspoken. When they finally parted, Maya's eyes were wet with tears. "This isn't supposed to happen," she whispered. "Maybe it's exactly what's supposed to happen," he said softly. She shook her head, torn between fear and longing. "I don't fit in your world, Richard." "Then I'll build a world where you do," he replied. For the first time, she didn't argue. Days turned into weeks. The scandal faded as quickly as it came. The public moved on to news stories, new gossip. But inside the mansion, something lasting had taken root. Not a fairy tale, but a quiet truth built on gratitude, respect, and love that neither of them had planned for. One morning, Maya received a letter in the mail. It was from the medical board. Her license had been reinstated, fully, officially. When she told Richard, he smiled like a man hearing good news for the first time in years. "Looks like the world finally caught up to what I already knew," he said. "What's that?" "That you were never just a janitor. You were always meant to save people." She smiled. "I only wanted to save one." He reached for her hand. "You did." Outside, sunlight streamed through the windows. The same city that once ignored her now whispered her name with admiration. Maya Williams, the woman who kissed a dying man and gave him back his life, had found her own second chance in the process, and though the world called it a miracle, to them, it was something simpler. It was love, born not from wealth or status, but from the quiet courage to care when no one else would.